All right, guys, welcome back. We're looking at the 2020 AP Computer Science A exam sample questions. In a previous video, looked at the first problem, which was dealing with arrays and array lists. Now we're going to go to the second problem, which deals with methods and control structures. So with that, let's get right into it. All right, this question involves the use of check digits, which can be used to help detect if an error has occurred when a number is entered or transmitted electronically. I believe they use them for credit cards. This actually has some application. The check digit class is shown below. You will write one method of the check digit class. Public class check digit, public static int get check, int num returns the check digit for num. Okay, and then public static boolean is valid int num with check digit returns true if num with check digit is valid or false otherwise, as described in part A, which we're reading right now. We haven't gotten to yet. Okay, so let's look at that. I believe that's going to be the next page. Write the isValid method. The method returns true if its parameter num with check digit, which represents a number containing a check digit, is valid, and false otherwise. The check digit is always the rightmost digit of the num with check digit. Okay, get check 159, return value 2. The check digit for 159 is 2. IsValid 1592 is true. The number 1592 is a valid combination of a number 159 and its check digit. Got it. So then we look at our counterexample, isValid 1593. That returns false because 2 is the check digit and not 3. Yep. Okay, so I kind of have an idea of where we need to go for this. And then we're doing public static boolean isValid int num with check digit. And I believe one of the methods they said we had was this guy right here, get check. So get check of whatever number will give us the return value, and that's this digit that we're looking for when we do this. And this is all part of the check digit class, I believe. So we should be able to get check and do all that. Okay, so let's write some code. All right, I'm going to get rid of the previous problem here. Public int, and I can't remember. Seriously, public static boolean is valid. Okay, I think I can remember that. Public static boolean is valid. Public static boolean is valid. And then it has to take an int num with check digit. One more time, make sure that signature is good. Yep. Okay, so we have a get check method. So we're going to get a num with the check digit. We have to get the last digit, and we have to make sure that the last digit matches if I take the first 3 or first however many digits and add those and put those into get check. So first thing we've got to do is separate the two numbers. So I'm going to say int num equals int num equals it's going to be num with check digit, and I'm just going to do divided by 10 because integer division will hack off the last digit, which should be our check digit. So that's that. And then to actually get the check digit, let's say int check digit equals, and that's going to be num with check digit, and that's going to be mod 10 because that will give me just the last digit, the remainder when I divide by 10, which will just be the ones place. So that's that. So now what I have to do is I just have to basically return, right? I have to return check or get check of num equals check digit. And I believe that's it for your isValid method, right? We're just checking that the get check value of my number, if I have the two numbers jammed together, which is num with check digit, and then I separate them out to num and check digit, I just am checking that get check of num is the same as check digit, and I return it'll be true If that is true, it'll be false. If that's false, that's why I'm just returning that Boolean expression. So that's part A of this problem. Okay, number of digits in num with check digit is between 2 and 7 inclusive. So I think that's fine. I think the way that we did it will work no matter how you do it. Programmer wants to modify the check digit class. Sorry. Well, the programmer wants to modify the check digit class to keep track of how many times a call to isValid is made with an incorrect check digit. Anytime a call to isValid is made with an incorrect check digit, the count should be increased by 1. Programmer would like to implement this change without making any changes to the signature of the isValid method or overloading isValid. Write a description of how you would change the check digit class in order to support this modification. Okay, so that's kind of tough because all isValid does is it returns that Boolean value, and we know it's static, and we've talked about static in class before, and maybe in other videos or other places you've learned about static in Java. But one of the key ideas about static is that there is no state stored, so you can't actually, like, we have check digit objects. Because this is the check digit class, but we can't actually use them for anything because those objects, the state that they carry, is not available inside of static methods. So my isValid static method can't actually access that state. So that means that we can't store a variable our normal way, and we have to kind of be thinking in a static context. In some ways, though, that also makes it clear that our variable, whatever it is, has to be static. Because we're dealing with all static stuff. So make sure to include the following in your response: identify any new or modified variables, constants, or methods. So for me, I think new var. We're going to do a complete sentence in a little bit. The new var is, I don't know, num checks. And we know that it's got to be static, because everything we're doing is static right now, and we also know that it's got to be an int. And basically, I think what we're going to do is, so that's this part, and then describe for each new or revised variable, constant, or method how it would change or be implemented, including the visibility and type. So really, the only thing we're going to change, and this is all going to be right here, isValid will increment the numchecks static variable. And I think that's it. Now you might be like, hey, Mr. Booth, you just said we can't have any state saved. And what I'm saying is, for a particular, so check digit really kind of has, it's just like a utility class. And goodness, let's see, what is it we're trying to do? Programmer wants to modify the check digit class to keep track of how many times a call to isValid is made with an incorrect check digit. Yeah, so they're not saying for any particular number, they're just saying in general. And since this utility class, check digit, uses only static methods, but in general, it's checking every time you pass in a number with a check digit, we can really do exactly what I'm saying here. We just make a new var, it's called numchecks, it's static, it's an int, and isValid will now increment numchecks, which is a static var, every time isValid is going to return false. I think that's it. Now, on the actual test, how would we do this problem? Like, how would you write the part B? I think what I wrote actually would make sense, as long as it's, if it's clear to you, it'll probably be clear to your exam people. After you write a note like this, though, what I would suggest you do is I'd suggest you, wherever you're writing your code, you basically take all of this and you turn all this into complete sentences somehow. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just taking a quick look at it. Okay, and then we'll just say here, okay, this is part B. And in order to keep track of times that a number is with an incorrect, or actually it's invalid digit is called or checked, we should add a static int variable called, and I think we wanted to call it num checks, and we could even make it num invalid checks, right? That'd be even more useful. So num invalid checks and increment it each time is valid is called and will return false. So something that I didn't talk about, but we need to have is we need to have some way to see how many invalid checks there are. In general, we want to keep stuff private. So we should add a private static int variable called num invalid checks and increment it each time is valid is called and will return is returning false. Maybe makes more sense. Additionally, a get num invalid checks getter method should be getter method which is static, which is weird for a getter method, but it is, which is static and static public and returns an int. Okay, so additionally, a get num invalid checks getter method, which is static, public, and returns an int, should be added to check digit or the check digit class, so that people can access that information. Because, and the reason we need that getter is because, again, we're making it private because that's the standard way we do it in Java. So this is the full sentences version. Notice that I wrote it down kind of like scratch notes. You might have a scratch piece of paper. I, in fact, would suggest it, and you write that down, and then you write it in complete sentences. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think that this would be a very solid sentence. You might be a little less clear or a little less good with the language. The big thing is just making sure that you get your private, static, int, that kind of stuff correct, and that you use the correct names for things like is valid. You use the same name throughout. So we said get num or num invalid checks, get num invalid checks. You just kind of want to make sure those parts are the same. But if you kind of are describe it and it's not as clear as you want, but you're up against the deadline, submit it anyway. And the people reading it are teachers like me, who know how to code, and they're going to be able to understand what you were saying. And they will probably have a wide range. Like a rubric that really handles a whole bunch of different options. So if in doubt, just say, it's good. If you feel like you kind of conveyed the message, if it's not perfect, but you're up against the deadline, still submit it as it is. And I guess we'll see after this year how this goes. I wonder in the written test if they'll be, in future years, if they'll be adding this section. I think it's a good section to add. It's actually like good thinking to show, but I guess we'll just have to see. Well, that's going to do it for the second problem, the methods and control structures problem. So yeah, that's going to be it for us. The final thing we need to talk about is the length of this video. It looks like it's 13 minutes, but it's actually 19 minutes long because of all the explanation and stuff we did. Just make sure you have 15 minutes to do this problem. Make sure that you're aware of the clock and that you submit when it comes red, and you just turn in what you have when you get to that point. So yeah, if this video is helpful, please leave a like. Otherwise, if you have questions, leave a comment, and we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.